Hello, Michael Grubb Evolved Ministry. So we're going to talk about royalty and what royalty is in the relation to how the machine on this planet operates. Now, I don't claim any absolutes in any of this because most of it is theory, alright? But I can personally say that with all the studies that I've done and all the experiences that I've had, much of this aligns with the knowledge that I've come to receive and understand as reality. Now, as it goes, members of any family which reigns by hereditary rights are often referred to as royalty or royals. It is also customary in some circles to refer to the extended families of a deposed monarch and his or her descendants as a royal family. There are many theories as to how royalty was conceived on this planet, and there are many theories in regards to the reasons that they exist. Now, it could be as simple as an alpha-oriented person or people taking control over a group dynamic when it lacked organization. Or it could be, as others have suggested, it could be, or it could have been developed during a feudalist reign of a wealthy landowner in Europe who gained much of his land and whatnot through conquests or military might, etc. Either way, one thing feeds into another and then leads into another. The leader takes control over a group and then acquires land through conquest. As they acquire land, they conquer those around them who are willing to lie down or who simply cannot defend their own, and then, by default, a king is born. To date, the majority of kings and queens who have ruled have done so through the passing of bloodlines and a rite of passage of heredity. When did this start, and who proclaimed one a ruler over a kingdom versus another? In rare cases, kingship was won through the act of war or murder. If no one was strong enough to challenge the current ruler, then the ruler would reign with an iron fist until death or challenge. Usually, royal bloodlines were kept pure through the act of incest. And there's definitely more than enough information out there that can be provided that definitely supports that claim. There are many other theories about how this all began, and that the first monarchs were the offspring of the gods themselves, quote-unquote titans. There are stories that exist throughout Sumeria and Egypt that say that the gods from the skies would intermingle their blood with the people of the earth, creating an elite race of humans that were meant to rule over the people in the absence of the gods. In fact, the Bible itself suggests that such actions took place. However, I've never looked at the Bible for truth in regards to any historical perspectives. Although there are a few things that line up here and there. If one were to look at some of the hieroglyphs that exist, they show rather large humanoid figures standing next to or holding slaves in their hands that were considerably smaller than themselves. Much of these drawings were depicted in 2D, which might explain the dimensional space that the gods were seen in relation to the humans who viewed them. For instance, were there rooms that separated the slaves from the gods based on holodeck technology? If so, were these rooms compressed in a dimensional space that made their images appear flat to the eyes of the humans who viewed them and then depicted them for the posterity of history? Or were all of the Egyptians just bad artists who had no sense of dimensional space when depicting their gods through artistic expression? I guess we'll never fully know. Anyway, continuing this banter and royalty, there are also many other theories that mankind was engineered by the gods via cloning to create a race of subservient beings that would mine essential gold for the gods. This gold would later be used as a form of propulsion for advanced aircrafts and possibly as an advanced means of light-based telecommunication. Many of the pyramids themselves were topped with gold. One could surmise that the gold would be an excellent conductor and a means for routing electricity from various points of the globe, especially if one had a matrix of these pyramids that had stretched over the entirety of the earth. As mankind would later find out, many of these pyramids were built in the exact same manner, seemingly by the same types of engineers, and had correlative latitude and longitude lines which would suggest strategic global placement. For some who have done the critical research, it would appear to them that the pyramids represent the same type of energetic centers that would be found on a computer motherboard. If we consider the idea that planet Earth is literally composed of various compressions of energy zones from solid matter to thin air, E equals mc squared, then it would only make sense that electricity could be organized in a matrix-like manner by those who engineered Earth, or by those who understood how energy itself operates and moves through the grid lines of this globe. Now, If this is the case, then it would very much illuminate why certain factions of people continue to rule on the planet, whether we consider them to be presidential or royalty themselves. If one were to do the research, they would find that every president in the U.S. that has ever ruled, except for one, has all been related to one British king. If this is the case, then it would very much illuminate why certain factions of people continue to rule on the planet, whether we consider them to be presidential or royalty themselves. If one were to do the research, okay, then they would find that every single president that has ever ruled in the United States, except for one, has all been related to one British king, and that nearly all of the royal families that exist on planet Earth are related by blood, whether distant or direct. Ask yourself this: if the U.S. actually became independent of Great Britain, why are all of our presidents directly related to this former monarch? British monarch. If incest itself is not being practiced by the royals, why are all the royal families related by blood, regardless of race, creed, background, or ethnicity? Now, if you look at it logically, these would be the people entrusted by the gods or the interterrestrial beings to maintain the true secrets of the planet from the goyim, which would be the people or the herd. So, the royals, the secret societies, or those of the papal religions, basically the Vatican, they are here to rule over the masses / slaves in the absence of their true masters. This quite possibly is the reason why royal families literally practice incest. This keeps the tainted human / hybrid bloodline pure, as this is the very way that their DNA strand can maintain enough manipulation to ensure absolute loyalty and subservience. In other words, the royal families are nothing more than high-value slaves who are owned and directly manipulated by their engineered genetics for further testing, breeding, and rule. They are the weakest of all slaves, yet are the closest to what many will never know as the masters. They serve as an example for the masses to follow, to emulate, and to aspire without the masses themselves ever coming into direct contact or knowledge of the absolute truth. Throughout the ages, the illusion of royal and papal authority has largely been held together by the collective perception that these institutions have concrete value and meaning by the people. Technically, there is nothing preventing the people from Earth from removing these illusions from the periphery of society, as these illusions have no value towards the survival, growth, or the evolution of mankind. Each of these institutions, whether it be royalty or religion, are highly dependent upon the other towards the maintenance of order and the control over the masses, yet through the masses and throughout the ages, they have fought against each other for the ultimate superiority and leverage against their flocks. Excommunication from the church has always been a valuable tool by papal authorities to ascertain subservience from the royals. If a king found themselves excommunicated by the hypocrites of the faith, there were a number of restrictions that would undermine the rule of the ousted monarch. In many instances, they could no longer import or export to countries who remained loyal to the Vatican. There were restrictions in trade, and they would lose leveraging authority over their own land and kingdoms by constituents who remained loyal to the church. This could even affect production of food and raw materials. Additionally, excommunication often opened them up for attack by other nations that based their unions and treaties on the ties and the political relationship that they collectively shared with the Vatican. King Henry VIII was one notable monarch who led his own crusade against the papacy due to the Vatican's disapproval of his relationship with Anne Boleyn and his request for a divorce from Queen Catherine of Aragon. Eventually, the schism led to the monarch's writing of the King James Bible and the subsequent empowerment of the Protestant movement. If there was anything that should have undermined people's perceptions of religion, it should have been the king's circumvention of the Vatican's illusion of authority. However, it only seemed to bring a new era for the creation of more stringent religions that utterly copied Roman Catholicism, yet claimed independence thereof. Although the church was unable to destroy King Henry VIII like it had so many before him, it led to a number of military failures, and it increased several attempts to undermine his rule in Great Britain. In the past, several monarchs and aspiring rulers have been excommunicated by the papacy for political reasons and purposes, which have led to wars, millions of deaths, and the subsequent removal of the perception of royal dominance through the eyes of the public. Due to the historically feeble nature of mankind and their subservience to the illusion of man-made doctrine claiming to be of God, the church has made or even destroyed kings if the kings failed to yield to the idea of the church supremacy and legitimacy. In fact, many kings had to have the legitimacy and the blessings of the church in order to be considered royalty. Therefore, it never mattered to the people whether hypocrites wore the garb or sat in the chairs of the vicar of the Christ while breaking every law written within their very own man-made doctrine. All that ever mattered was that they sat there to begin with, continuing to perpetuate the illusion of their man-made traditions while claiming themselves to be representative of the gods or whichever god suited their present needs. On this planet, more deaths can be attributed to the egoic royal families, religions, and power-hungry popes than could be blamed upon by random accidents, plague, and pestilence put together. Yet mankind continues to place them upon pedestals, turning them into gods, false idols, false gods, and figures of worship. Therefore, it could be just a person who provided a means of survival when no other people would take control, and then eventually it was simply overblown. This is the sort of the thing that could be passed down from generation to generation, growing more and more grandiose with each passing generation. If there was ever a logical reason for the machine or the gods themselves to have created the illusion of royalty on this planet, that reason has now run its course. As mankind advances further into the future, there is less and less use for royal bloodlines within this planetary system. Unfortunately, mankind continues to hold on to these institutions that do not benefit it, and in fact, do more to stunt its overall evolution than anything else. As we grow wiser and move towards unity, mankind is realizing that there is no place for the illusion of superiority or competition in a world where we all truly have equal value.